Hello and welcome to episode number 7 in the Let's Build Shadowgate series. Welcome back. In the last episode, if you've been following along, we did something that was kind of similar to what we did in episode number 3. We added the hallway screen and gave the user the ability to click on the door and open the hallway door. And when we left that episode, we had a little bit of a bug. There was a chance, depending on where the user clicked on the front door, that the door behind it would open even though the user didn't click. So if you're unfamiliar with that bug, go ahead and check out the end of episode number 6, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So the purpose of this episode, we want to do a couple of things. The first thing we have to do is get rid of that bug. We have to make sure that every time the user clicks the mouse button, only one action takes place. Then, after we have that done, we want to be able to transition into the third screen, and I think that'll be the final screen in this tutorial, but we want to give the user the ability to click on the door in the hallway, open that door, and then enter into the final room where maybe we'll have a boss or add some gameplay elements there, but kind of wrap up the program so that we have a completed game, albeit a very short game, a completed game. So let's go ahead and get started with episode number 7 of the Let's Build Shadowgate series. So here we are back in the world that we left after episode number 6. When we hit play here, we can see that the world is in large part the same state. When we hit space, we have the front door. We click on the front door, we enter, we're in the hallway, and we have the ability to open up this door, but not the ability to go in just yet. You'll recall that we do have that bug that I talked about just a second ago, where if you click and your mouse is already in front of the door, even though the screen isn't visible yet, if I click on screen number 1 and make that transition, that door will automatically open. So we're going to explain why that happens and how we're going to fix it. Before we do that, let's go ahead and watch all of our variables to make sure that we can keep track of them as our program is running. And then we'll pull these methods over as we need them. In fact, the first one we're going to need is this click handler method, because this will help to explain why we have the bug that we have. So as it stands right now, the world checks to see if it's on game screen number 1, and if it is, it runs screen 1. After it's done with this processing, it moves on to screen number 2 and runs the screen 2 handler. So here we have the screen 1 handler, and here we have the screen 2 handler. So what's causing that door opening bug really has to do with where the screen is transitioning from screen 1 to screen 2. When I go into the screen 1 handler here, you can see we have our code here at the top that executes if the mouse is within the bounding box of the front door, and we have these coordinates set up for my monitor. And if the door is closed, then the door opens, and if the door is open, then it moves to the second screen. So what you'll notice here, though, is when the screen moves to the hallway, game screen gets set to a value of 2. This happens in the screen 1 handler. This is kind of the reason why we have that bug. Because what's going to happen is, after the game is done processing the screen 1 handler, it's then going to move on to this next check. Remember that every time we click, every one of these if statements is being executed in order. So theoretically, if I were to take this if statement and just move it on top here, we wouldn't have that bug. The reason we wouldn't have that bug is we check to see if the game screen is equal to 2, which it's not, it would be equal to 1. So we would not run the screen 2 handler, then we would go and check to see if the game screen is equal to 1, which it is, and run the screen 1 handler. To give you a demonstration, if I were to hit play right now, and enter the world, click here, and now enter, you notice that this door isn't opening. When I click, the functionality is still there. So we'll move this back right here. Essentially, the bug is created because this door right here shares a common region with the front door. In other words, when I go to this screen right here, even though you can't see screen number 2 behind it, that door would be located in about this region on the screen, give or take. Every time you click the mouse button, this click handler runs all of its code once. it checks to see if the game screen equals 1, which it does on that front screen. And let's say the door is already open, so the door is opened. The code tells it to open up the next screen and change this game screen to number 2. After that's done, that's this block of code right here, it finishes executing the screen 1 handler. That moves back to the click handler to continue moving top to bottom. However, the screen 1 handler changed the game screen to game screen number 2. What that means is when we get to this next if check right here, game screen indeed equals 2, and so it's going to check the XY coordinates again. If the XY coordinates are in that common region, the door will automatically open. So what we need to do is find a way to make sure that every time you click the mouse button, only one event is occurring. That is, either a door is opening, or you're entering a room, or you're leaving a room. It doesn't matter what it is. We want to write code in our program to ensure that only one thing happens for every click of the mouse. I'm going to accomplish this by adding a new Boolean variable. So go to Properties, and let's create a new variable, and I'm going to call this variable not clicked. It's going to be a Boolean variable set to a default value of true. And what I want this to represent is that this is going to be part of the click handler method, and it will represent whether or not an event has taken place, or whether or not something that a mouse click forces to happen has already happened. I don't know if that's the best way to phrase that, but hopefully once we get this code in here, you'll see how it's working. Every time the mouse is clicked, I want to reset this value to true over a duration of 0 seconds. What that means is, and we're going to watch this variable, is as soon as the mouse is clicked, before we've processed screen number 1, screen number 2, or any of the hundreds of screens that we may have, this not clicked variable is going to get set to a value of true. That means when the code starts executing, it will know that nothing has taken place. It hasn't executed an action at all. I only want these screen handlers to operate if the world hasn't been clicked yet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add an AND clause to both of our game screen handlers. I'm going to do that by clicking the arrow on the far right, selecting logic, and putting in a placeholder value of AND true. Then I'm going to drag not clicked over into that placeholder. I'm going to do the same thing for screen number 2 and really any future screens that I add. What this means now is game screen 1 or game screen 2 will only be processed if the number of the game screen variable is correct, that is either screen 1 or screen 2, and the world has not taken an action yet. Now this by itself isn't going to solve any of our problems. You'll notice when I hit play and enter the world, we still have the same bug. But we do have the framework to solve this problem because we have a variable that keeps track of this. So you can even see this right here, the not clicked is equal to true, we enter, but nothing is changing that variable. What that means is these not clicked checks are always evaluating to true. The important step that we're going to have to remember to do as programmers is to adjust this variable whenever a significant event occurs. That is, whenever something significant happens in our program, not clicked should be changed from a value of true to false. For the screen 1 handler, we have two opportunities for a significant event. We have the opening of the front door and the entering the hallway. In both of these cases, in the do together block that does all our screen transitioning and changes other variables, I'm going to put this not clicked variable we just created in there, set it to a value of false over a duration of 0 seconds. This will have the effect of changing the value of the not clicked variable to false and preventing these other screen handlers from running if something in a previous screen already occurred. So let's put this into the door open and I'll show you what I mean. So not clicked, set to a value of false over a duration of 0 seconds when the user enters the hallway. If I hit play now, we can see not clicked is true. And when I click on just the world and no event happens, there's no reason to process not clicked and no method is actually running. But when I open the door, I want you to pay attention to the value of not clicked. When I click on the door, not clicked gets set to a value of false. That's my cue that when I ran that method, the game knows whether or not a significant event took place. If I click again, let's say I click over here in the good screen, that gets set back to a value of true. The reason it's set to a value of true is every time I click the mouse, it's going to reset to true and will only change to false if it hits one of these significant events and I've told it to change to a value of false. The reason this is important is because this game screen 2 handler can't operate unless the world has not been clicked. And if a significant event has taken place in screen number 1, it's going to block the screen 2 handler from operating. If I hit play now and click here at the top and enter the hallway, we can see the door remains closed and not clicked has a value of false. If I restart now and I click in this area where we were encountering the bug earlier, so I click the button and you can see that my mouse was over the door, but the door didn't open. That's because as soon as the screen transitions, not clicked gets set to a value of false, preventing the screen 2 handler from running, and since the screen 2 handler can't run, it's never making this check to see if the door should be opened. It won't do that until I click again and reset that clicked value to true. So just to keep our program consistent, I'm going to drag not clicked here in screen number 2 to a value of false over a duration of 0 seconds as well, so that our program knows that opening this door in the hallway is also a significant event. Now the question you may be asking is, well, why wouldn't I just reorder this and have it go from the highest number to the lowest number? That would also solve the problem. And on the surface, it seems a little bit easier. The trouble you're going to run into is right now we're only moving forward in our game screens. We're going from screen 1 to 2 and from 2 to 3 and so on. But later, we're going to want to program our game so that the user can move backwards as well. Maybe we want to give the ability to the user to move from this hallway back to the front of the castle. That would create a situation where moving backwards would have the same problem that we're having right now moving forward. By having this not clicked Boolean variable, we can make sure that only one event happens per mouse click in whatever direction the user is moving. Now this is one of the things that can seem a little bit complicated at first, but stick with it. Try and follow the logic in your head, because while it may seem a little bit cumbersome and it may seem like a bit of a pain to remember to add the changing of that variable every time you have a significant event happen in your program, it really will make the long-term program a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. Now that we have that bug kind of hammered out, we're going to end episode number 7 right here because it's starting to get a little bit lengthy. So what we'll do in the next episode is transition to screen number 3, which is the screen that's got the Banshee on it as part of the graphics pack that you can download. But we're going to add our transition there and give some kind of end game. Now, it's not a very fun game just yet. You pretty much just click through a series of menus. It's good practice, but it's not a fun game. So we're not going to be quite done with our Shadowgate game once we transition to screen number 3. Once we get that shell going, we're going to want the ability to have an inventory, maybe pick up a sword, and have both a winning and losing condition in our game. So we are getting pretty close to having the complete framework of our game down, but once we have the framework done, we're going to add some elements that will hopefully make our game a little bit more fun and maybe a little bit more challenging. As always, I appreciate everybody's support of the Let's Build Shadowgate series, as well as the Introduction to Alice series that's also on this channel. You can certainly ask any questions that you have in the comments. If something didn't make sense to you or something's not working in your program, leave those in the comments and I will help you out any way that I can. Until next time, thank you so much and have a great day.